Cruise crew members talk about you the moment the elevator doors close, and most passengers have no idea how much the staff actually notices. A crew member with years on the ships once said the crew knows within the first 10 minutes exactly which passengers are going to be a problem all week, and it has nothing to do with how much money you spent on your cabin. I spent months talking with cabin stewards, buffet staff, and guest services agents, and they describe the same 12 behaviors that quietly get you flagged, whispered about, and sometimes reported to management before you ever realize it. Number 1 on this list is something almost every passenger does without thinking twice, and it is the fastest way to get labeled as trouble for the entire voyage. Stick around, because number 6 is the one crew members say drives them the most quietly furious. Before we get into the full list, if you want more honest insider guides like this one, tap subscribe on Senior Cruise Secrets right now. It genuinely helps this channel keep making these videos, and it means you will not miss the next reveal. Mistake number 12, bringing your own toilet paper or flushable wipes on board. Here is something most passengers never think twice about, and crew members notice it instantly. A 34-year-old traveler from Ohio packed a giant bag of flushable wipes for her cruise because she read online that ship plumbing is delicate, and she brought enough for the whole week. Within 2 days, her cabin steward found the bathroom trash overflowing with wipes that had clogged the toilet twice, and maintenance had to be called both times. The reason this happens so often is simple. Cruise ship plumbing runs on a vacuum system that pulls waste through narrow pipes using suction, and anything other than toilet paper, even products labeled flushable, can jam that system fast. Crew members quietly track which cabins call in plumbing issues more than once, and repeat offenders get a polite but firm note added to their file. Here is what you do instead. Use only the toilet paper provided in the cabin, and if you brought wipes for personal comfort, throw them in the regular trash instead of the toilet. The reason this matters is that a single clog can back up plumbing for an entire deck, not just your own bathroom. And that is exactly the kind of thing that gets a passenger remembered for the wrong reason. Cabin stewards say the passengers who ask first whether a certain product is safe for the plumbing are the ones who almost never end up on that quiet list of repeat maintenance calls. Mistake number 11, constantly complaining about weather or missed ports to guest services. Guest services agents deal with hundreds of interactions a day, and here is what they will not say to your face. They can tell within seconds which complaints are genuine problems and which ones are just venting about things nobody controls. A 58-year-old passenger from Texas visited guest services 4 separate times over 2 days to complain that a storm had forced the ship to skip a port, even though the captain had already explained the safety reasoning over the intercom. By the 3rd visit, the same agent recognized her immediately, and staff began quietly steering her requests to the bottom of the priority list because her complaints were not actionable. The reason this backfires is that guest services agents remember faces and cabin numbers far better than passengers expect, and when a real issue comes up later, that passenger gets slower service because they were already filed under difficult. Here is what you do instead. Save your energy for problems the crew can actually fix, a broken air conditioner or a billing error, and when it comes to weather or itinerary changes, ask what the ship is doing to make the day still enjoyable rather than demanding an explanation for something out of anyone else's control. This one habit alone can change how fast every future request of yours gets handled for the rest of the cruise. Mistake number 10, playing music or videos loudly without headphones. This is one crew members bring up again and again, and it is more common than most people realize. A 41-year-old traveler from Florida sat by the pool every afternoon playing videos out loud on his phone speaker, assuming the noise blended into the general pool deck atmosphere. What he did not realize is that pool attendants receive multiple complaints a day about exactly this behavior, and staff are trained to approach politely but firmly because it is one of the top sources of passenger-to-passenger conflict on board. The reason it escalates so quickly is that in a confined shared space like a pool deck or a cabin hallway, sound carries much further than people expect, and what feels like normal volume to the person holding the phone feels like an intrusion to everyone within 20 feet. Crew members say passengers who get corrected for this once and continue anyway are flagged as inconsiderate for the rest of the voyage, and it colors how staff respond to the passenger other requests. Here is what you do instead. Bring a cheap pair of wireless earbuds specifically for the cruise, and treat shared spaces the way you would treat a quiet section of a public park. It takes one small habit to avoid becoming the passenger everyone on deck quietly complains about. Mistake number 9, stacking your dirty dishes after meals. This one surprises people because it seems polite on the surface, but servers describe it as one of the most consistently frustrating habits they deal with. A 62-year-old couple from Arizona always neatly stacked their plates, cups, and napkins after breakfast in the buffet, believing they were helping the crew clean up faster. What they did not know is that cruise ship dishware is often fragile and specifically designed to nest a certain way for the dishwashing machines, and stacking plates with food residue and cutlery mixed in actually slows down the cleaning process and increases breakage. Buffet staff say stacked plates with sauce or food trapped between them are harder to scrape and wash than plates left as they are, and it adds extra minutes per table during the busiest service windows. The reason this earns a quiet reputation is that staff have to individually separate what guests thought was a helpful gesture, and it happens so often that some crew members have started referring to certain repeat offenders by their table number instead of their name. Here is what you do instead. Simply leave your dishes on the table as you finish, and if you want to help, stack only the same type of item, like cups with cups, never mixing plates with cutlery or napkins in between. Mistake number 8, taking photos during shows with the flash on. Theater crew members say this is one of the fastest ways to get quietly noted by security staff working the aisles. A 49-year-old traveler from Nevada wanted the perfect photo of the headline performer during the evening show and used flash photography from her seat multiple times throughout the performance. What she did not realize is that flash photography can genuinely startle performers mid-routine, especially during acrobatic or aerial numbers, and cruise lines have strict no-flash policies precisely because of safety incidents in the past. Security staff working the theater are specifically trained to identify repeat flash use in the crowd, and passengers who ignore a first polite reminder are quietly logged for the rest of the cruise, sometimes resulting in reduced seating priority for future shows. The reason this matters so much to crew is that a single flash at the wrong moment during an aerial act has caused real injuries on ships in the past, which is why the policy is enforced so consistently. Here is what you do instead. Switch your phone to airplane mode or manually disable flash before the show starts. And if you want a great photo, wait for the curtain call when performers are taking their bows, and flash is far less disruptive. Most theaters on board are dim enough that a steady non-flash shot during the finale looks just as impressive without ever risking a warning from security staff working the aisles. If you have caught yourself doing even one of these so far, comment the number below and let me know. It helps me know which mistakes to cover in more detail in future videos. And if this list is opening your eyes even a little, hitting like right now genuinely helps more people find this before their next cruise, especially first-time cruisers who have no idea any of this is being watched so closely. Mistake number 7, letting cabin doors slam shut instead of closing them quietly. Cabin stewards describe this as one of the most common sources of hallway complaints on any given sailing. A 37-year-old traveler from Georgia let her cabin door slam shut every single time she left or returned, morning, afternoon, and late at night, without ever noticing the sound traveling down the corridor. What she did not realize is that cruise ship hallways are narrow and made of materials that amplify sound, so a door slamming at 11 at night can wake up passengers 3 or 4 cabins away in both directions. Cabin stewards receive noise complaints tied to specific doors and specific times almost every sailing, and they quietly note which cabins are the repeat source, because it shapes how quickly they respond to the passenger other requests during the week. The reason it happens so often is that most cruise cabin doors are heavier than home doors and have a stronger automatic closing mechanism, so people are used to letting go and walking away, not realizing the extra weight behind the door. Here is what you do instead. Hold the door with your hand until it clicks shut gently every single time, And if you have family members constantly coming and going, agree on a quiet, close routine as a group so nobody in your party becomes the reason for a hallway complaint. Mistake number 6, saving pool chairs for hours without using them. This is the one crew members say drives them the most quietly furious because it happens on almost every sea day and it is entirely preventable. A 55-year-old traveler from California put towels and sunglasses on 4 pool chairs at 7 in the morning before heading to breakfast, and did not return to actually use them until nearly 11, while dozens of other passengers walked past empty reserved chairs the entire time. Pool attendants are instructed to enforce a reasonable time limit on unattended chairs, but many hesitate to confront guests directly because it often leads to arguments, so the frustration builds silently instead. The reason this behavior stands out so much to staff is that it directly affects other guests, and pool attendants end up fielding complaints from passengers who cannot find a seat, even though there are technically enough chairs for everyone on board. Crew members say passengers who do this repeatedly across multiple days become recognizable, and staff sometimes begin removing towels from chairs left unattended for more than 30 or 45 minutes, an outcome the original passenger rarely expects and often argues about publicly. Here is what you do instead. Only place your belongings on a chair when you are within a few minutes of actually sitting down. And if your whole family wants to secure a spot before breakfast, send one person to hold the chairs while everyone else eats, rather than reserving 4 or 5 chairs for hours at a time. Mistake number 5, cutting in line at the buffet or boarding areas. This is one of the fastest ways to turn an entire section of passengers against you, and crew members notice the ripple effect immediately. A 44-year-old traveler from Illinois walked straight past a long buffet line to grab a plate at the front, assuming nobody would mind since it was only for a moment. What he did not realize is that buffet lines during peak breakfast and lunch hours can stretch quite long, and passengers standing in that line notice line cutting far faster than staff do, which means crew often get pulled into conflicts they did not start. The reason staff dread this scenario is that once one passenger cuts a line, it frequently triggers a chain reaction where other guests decide the rules no longer apply, and buffet staff end up spending time managing tension between passengers instead of managing food service. Crew working boarding and reboarding areas describe the same pattern, where one passenger cutting ahead during a busy port day boarding rush can set off a wave of frustration that makes the entire process slower for everyone, including the crew trying to scan boarding cards efficiently. Here is what you do instead. Treat every line on board the way you would treat a line at a busy restaurant back home, and if you are simply grabbing one small item, politely ask the people directly behind you if they mind, rather than assuming it is fine to skip ahead unannounced. Mistake number 4, blocking hallways while chatting with your group. Crew members moving carts, luggage, and room service trays through narrow corridors deal with this constantly, and it slows down far more than most passengers realize. A 60-year-old group of friends from Michigan regularly stopped in the middle of a narrow hallway to chat after dinner, spreading out enough that a steward pushing a service cart had no way to pass without asking them to move. What the group did not realize is that cruise ship hallways are intentionally narrow to maximize cabin space, and crew members are on a strict schedule delivering room service, turning down cabins, and moving supplies between decks throughout the evening. The reason this frustrates staff so consistently is that stopping to ask a group to move takes time that adds up across dozens of similar interactions during a single shift, and crew members say certain hallways during certain hours become bottlenecks almost entirely because of chatting groups rather than actual congestion. Here is what you do instead. Step to one side of the hallway or into a nearby alcove if you want to keep talking with your group, and get in the habit of glancing behind you periodically for crew members waiting with carts, since most staff are too polite to interrupt a conversation even when they are in a hurry. Mistake number 3. Being late for excursions, reservations, or the ship all aboard time. This is the mistake crew members say has the highest real consequences, because unlike most items on this list, it can genuinely ruin the entire trip for someone. A 52-year-old traveler from New York lost track of time exploring a port town and returned to the pier 11 minutes after the ship published all aboard time, only to watch the ship already pulling away from the dock. What he did not realize is that cruise lines publish all aboard times specifically earlier than actual departure to account for exactly this kind of delay. And once that buffer passes, the ship genuinely will not wait, regardless of how close a passenger is. Excursion staff describe a similar pattern on organized shore tours, where one late passenger holds up an entire bus or tour group, and guides are put in the uncomfortable position of either delaying everyone else or leaving a passenger behind at a scheduled meeting point. The reason crew take this so seriously is that being late does not just affect the late passenger, it cascades into delayed departures, frustrated tour groups, and in the worst cases, passengers stranded in a foreign port needing expensive emergency travel arrangements to catch up with the ship. Here is what you do instead. Set your watch or phone to ship time the moment you board. Treat the printed all aboard time as if it is 30 minutes earlier than it actually is, and always return from an excursion at least an hour before the ship's stated departure, never cutting it close no matter how tempting one more shop or one more view happens to be. Mistake number 2. Drinking too much and becoming disruptive. Security and bar staff describe this as the single fastest way to go from being a normal passenger to being a name written in an incident log. A 29-year-old traveler from Louisiana had several drinks at the pool bar in the early afternoon, then continued drinking through dinner and into the evening show, becoming loud, argumentative, and eventually confrontational with another table during the performance. What he did not realize is that cruise ship bar staff and security are specifically trained to recognize escalating intoxication long before a passenger themselves feels out of control, and staff quietly communicate with each other across different bars and venues about passengers who are trending in that direction. The reason this behavior gets noted so quickly is that alcohol-related incidents are one of the top reasons passengers get formally warned, confined to their cabin for the remainder of the sailing, or in serious cases removed from the ship entirely at the next port, and crew members are trained to intervene early precisely to avoid those outcomes. Here is what you do instead. Pace your drinking across the full day rather than concentrating it into a few hours. Alternate alcoholic drinks with water, and if a staff member gently suggests slowing down, treat it as a genuine warning rather than an inconvenience, because by the time that conversation happens, you are already being watched more closely than you think. Mistake number 1. Skipping hand washing before entering the buffet. This is the single most avoidable mistake on the entire list, and crew members say it is the one they wish every passenger understood. A 66-year-old traveler from Pennsylvania walked past the hand sanitizing station at the buffet entrance without stopping, assuming a quick squeeze of sanitizer at the table afterward would be just as effective. What she did not realize is that cruise ships are uniquely vulnerable to fast-spreading illness because thousands of passengers share the same serving spoons, railings, and surfaces throughout the day, and outbreaks that would stay contained on land can spread through an entire ship within 48 hours. Crews stationed at buffet entrances are specifically trained to encourage hand washing because studies on cruise ship illness outbreaks consistently point to hand contact at buffets as one of the primary transmission points, and staff who see passengers skip the station repeatedly quietly flag it to their supervisors as a health and safety concern rather than a minor inconvenience. The reason this matters more than almost anything else on this list is that unlike a noise complaint or a hallway delay, a preventable illness outbreak can shut down entire venues, cancel activities, and ruin the trip for hundreds of passengers at once, not just the one who skipped washing their hands. Here is what you do instead. Make it a personal rule to stop at the sanitizing station every single time you enter the buffet, no exceptions, and encourage everyone in your travel group to do the same. Because on a ship this size, one small habit protects far more people than you would ever expect. 12 small habits, and every single one of them is something crew members notice within days, sometimes within hours, whether the cruise costs $500 or $50,000 a person. None of this is about being perfect on your cruise. It is about understanding that the crew is watching far more closely than most passengers ever imagine. And a few small adjustments can be the difference between being remembered as an easy, respected guest or becoming the passenger staff quietly talk about after their shift ends. If this video changed how you are going to approach your next sailing, subscribe to Senior Cruise Secrets so you catch the next insider guide before you set sail. Drop a comment telling me which one of these 12 surprised you the most. And share this with anyone in your family getting ready to cruise, because the crew notices and now so do you.